We are beyond the baseline in Davenport, Iowa, as Hulk Hogan's TNA continues its tour of the US, heading towards pay-per-view February 14th. Tonight, the My Bloody Valentine tournament continues. The winners of the 3 matches will go on to meet last week's 3 winners in a 6-man tag team match on next week's iMPACT. Hulk Hogan has more information on the My Bloody Valentine pay-per-view itself. Eric Young looks to avenge his television championship loss when he takes on the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and the Olympic Gold Medalist Kurt Angle shares his thoughts on Samoa Joe's actions as of late in preparation for their one-on-one match in 10 days' time.
I'll never let up. Ferocious, I'm fed up. Dismissing the competition, you're hopeless.
Kurt Angle comes to the ring. The Olympic Gold Medalist says he's looking forward to picking up where he left off with Samoa Joe before main event Mafia business took precedent in the summer of last year. Angle says that he's going to prove that he is the true machine of professional wrestling, not Samoa Joe. But Kurt is interrupted by Scott Steiner, who blames Kurt for the downfall of the main event Mafia when Angle lost the TNA World Title to AJ Styles, a championship that Steiner is going to win at My Bloody Valentine. This leads to AJ Styles coming down to the ring, telling Big Papa Pump he's first got to win the 6-man tag team match next week on iMPACT. But in the meantime, how about Steiner grab another tag team partner for tonight? Joe comes down to the ring, but before a scuffle can ensue, Eric Bischoff's music hits. Easy informing the 4 superstars to save their brawl for the main event, as Steiner will team with Samoa Joe to take on AJ Styles and Kurt Angle. Starting off with a 69, I want to say that's nice, but I felt this should be a few points more. We open up tonight with EY hoping to get revenge on Ric Flair for betraying Eric Young at Genesis, but the combination of the greatest man on television, Ric Flair, and the television champion, Desmond Wolfe, are just too much for Eric. In a bout that had good heat and decent wrestling, Ric Flair defeated Eric Young in 7:15 by submission after interference from Desmond Wolfe. By submission with a figure 4 leg lock, of course. I may have to go into the moveset and add that perhaps. The match was designed to tell a specific story. Yes, we're opening up with a mandatory storytelling match here. 7 rating of 57, nothing to shout home about. After the match, Eric Young is laying on the mat as Ric Flair styles and profiles in the ring. Desmond Wolfe picks up a mic and tells EY that Eric Young is due his television title rematch, and he will get it against Desmond Wolfe at My Bloody Valentine in 10 days. But only if EY agrees to the stipulation that he's now to play by the rules of the Nature Boy if Eric wants his title shot, because it will be Desmond Wolfe defending the television championship against Eric Young for the TNA television title in a submission match. So yes, Eric Young now has a chance to take back his television title from the Wolfman, but he's got to do it in a kind of match that EY lost to just now with the use of a submission. 10 days for Eric Young to work in a hold that could potentially make Desmond Wolfe tap out. 7 rating of 60? Okay. Kevin Nash is with the rest of the band, Scott Hall and Sean Waltman, and the 3 are being interviewed by Christy Hemme over their thoughts on a chance to challenge for the TNA World Championship at My Bloody Valentine. But first the trio will need to win their respective singles matches tonight. Kevin Nash to take on Jeff Jarrett, Sean Waltman to go one-on-one with Sting, and Scott Hall who will battle with Mick Foley in a few moments. The Amazing Red and Don West walk past the trio, DW accidentally bumping into Kevin Nash, Big Sexy not reacting well to what was just an accidental shove. Nash looks at Hall and Waltman as the 3 turn their gazes towards Don West and the Amazing Red and attack the pair. Beer Money, that is Robert Roode and James Storm, come to make the save, only for Nash, Hall and Waltman to attack Roode and Storm in return, leaving Beer Money, Don West and the Amazing Red down and out. 7 rating of 51, nothing special. Mr. Anderson comes down to the ring and grabs a mic. He tells the fans of TNA not to put their trust in someone like Jeff Hardy. It was only last year in that place up north where the charismatic Enigma's career crashed and burned, and Anderson believes it's more than likely that Jeff will crash and burn here in TNA. Hogan interrupts and tells Anderson that everyone crashes and burns at some point in their life, but all deserve the chance of redemption. Tonight, Jeff's redemption begins in TNA when he goes one-on-one with Mr. Anderson, tonight. Well, we'll talk more about the elephant in the room at the conclusion of this episode. But in the meantime, in reference to Jeff Hardy crashing and burning, and that place up north and redemption, I'm making reference here to Jeff Hardy leaving that place up north, i.e. the WWE, in the summer of 2009. He loses the World Heavyweight title to CM Punk as he's on his way out at SummerSlam. I can't remember if he was taking a sabbatical or something. He said he needed a break, if I remember rightly. But it will transpire in September 2009 that Jeff Hardy would be arrested on drug charges. Now, had Jeff had been in WWE still, this would have been his third wellness violation, and per WWE's policy, Jeff would have been fired, if my memory serves me correctly.
Left WWE on top of the world, and I had to work a few extra months because I wasn't going to resign. I'd failed 2 drug tests at this point. What are the chances they're going to test me tomorrow? And I did what I shouldn't have done, and there it was, man. I was screwed for those 2 weeks, so much stress, and to know I just screwed up such a big spot.
But anyway, this is a storyline here. Jeff being given his chance at redemption by Hulk Hogan whilst working in TNA, although Mr. Anderson isn't convinced. Summary rating of 68 is decent. I don't know if I'm expecting better scores here because I'm still used to TEW 2020 and Invasion perhaps, and maybe I should quit my whining. As long as the show is over 64 for a show rating, I think that is the target. That's okay with me. So, who will be the winners in the 3 matches of the My Bloody Valentine tournament tonight? That will face the 3 winners from last week's Impact on next week's Impact in a 6-man tag team match. Well, with the first result, the 3 winners tonight will not be all members of the band. As in a bout that had great heat and decent wrestling, Mick Foley defeated Scott Hall in 5:53 with a double arm DDT. During the match, we had Kevin Nash and Sean Waltman both distract Mick Foley at ringside. What the road agent notes don't show is that Robert Roode and James Storm of Beer Money also show up to ringside, with Nash and Waltman's attention turned to the tag team. Their presence also distracts Scott Hall, who takes his eyes off Foley in the ring, only to later turn around and walk into the double arm DDT from Mick Foley. Scott Hall will not get the chance to challenge for the TNA World Title at My Bloody Valentine because of his defeat tonight. Foley awaits who he will team up with next week later. Will it be with Double J or Big Sexy? And will it also be with Sean Waltman or Sting? 7 rating of 60, so if I'm now lowering my expectations, I think I'm happy with a 60 here. Crystal, now only known as Crystal and no longer associated with her husband Bobby, nor his surname, comes down to the ring, and she's accompanied by the group of guys that took out the boss last week. Christopher Daniels, Carl Anderson and Giant Bernard. Crystal says her success in the wrestling industry isn't because of her surname Lashley, it's because of her first name, Crystal. And now realising Crystal has taken Bobby as far as he can go, which Crystal feels isn't very far, it's time for Crystal to expand her horizons in TNA. Her first task is to recruit a group that could take out her soon-to-be ex-husband Bobby. That mission starting last week, working with Christopher Daniels and adding Carl Anderson and Giant Bernard to her ranks. Bobby will soon be out of the picture, and Crystal can work with her new clients to become the next dominant force in professional wrestling. Her superstars are almighty, her superstars are powerful, her superstars are crystallised. So I've now put Daniels, Anderson and Bernard as a stable, and crystallised is the name. Honestly, I don't know if I'm forming this group merely as a stable to prolong the feud between Bobby and Crystal, or if I could plan on doing something with the stable long term. Time will tell in this one, honestly. But I really like the name Crystallise. I think it works really well. I was going to call the group Crystallization, but I think that's a bit of a mouthful for a stable name. Semi-rating of 40 isn't good. I don't think Crystal's mic skills are that great, but maybe I should be patient and give her a chance. The beautiful people are in the back with Awesome Kong. Velvet Sky tells Kong that Velvet understands how tough it must have been for Kong growing up, not being beautiful in the natural sense of the word. Awesome Kong thinks this is an implication that Velvet Sky is pretty much calling her ugly, and Kong looks like she's about to attack Velvet. But Sky's trying to get the point across that not everyone can be beautiful in that sense. But there are other ways that someone can be beautiful, and how beautiful can be relevant. For example, monsters can be beautiful, for example such as Awesome Kong's destruction of her opponents in the ring. That could be an example of beautiful. Velvet Sky wants Awesome Kong to be an honorary member of the beautiful people, if Kong could take out Tara, the TNA Knockouts champion. But Hogan coming back from the stage area spots the Knockouts talking and interrupts the conversation, telling Awesome Kong that she will have a chance to become Knockouts champion at My Bloody Valentine. But first she'll have to battle ODB and Roxy in a 3-way match tonight to earn her title shot. Semi rating of 45, okay. Beer Money in the Bank continue on from Scott Hall's defeat earlier as the five brawl in the back. The numbers advantage is clearly working in Nash, Hall and Waltman's favour as the band leave James Storm and Robert Roode down and out. Both Nash and Waltman still with a chance to be part of that 6-man tag team match next week to determine the 3 contenders to the world title. 7 rating of 52. The boss Bobby Lashley's pacing around backstage. Bobby's still upset after being told his wife Crystal wants a divorce. Team 3D tried to console Lashley. Brother Ray and Brother Devon had been there before. It hurts, but all is fair in love and war is a tagline for My Bloody Valentine, as the tagline for February's pay-per-view draws near. Bischoff overhears the conversation and agrees with said tagline, and he's going to put it to the test, as the 3 superstars that jumped Lashley last week, Christopher Daniels, Carl Anderson and Giant Bernard, will take on the team of Bobby Lashley, Brother Devon and Brother Ray in a 6-man tag team match at My Bloody Valentine. 7 rating of 67 puts me a little less on edge because I'm not getting much to make me go wow here so far. The second match of 3 in tonight's My Bloody Valentine tournament, and in about that great heat and decent wrestling, Jeff Jarrett defeated Kevin Nash in 6:09 with the stroke. During the match we saw Scott Hall and Sean Waltman distract Double J. And again, what I should mention that isn't shown here is that Beer Money, who were beaten backstage again by the band, aren't giving up without a fight. They're back to battle this time with Hall and Waltman. Now it's Nash taking his eyes off his opponent, then turning round to walk into Double J's finisher. No Hall, and now no Nash, in next week's 6-man tag team match. Jeff Jarrett will be the man in that match, and he will team with Mick Foley against Jeff Hardy, Mr. Anderson and Scott Steiner. But who are Foley's and Double J's partner? Is it Sting, or is it Sean Waltman? We'll find out a little later on. 7 rating of 61, not too bad. Hulk Hogan comes to the ring and is exciting for My Bloody Valentine, the pay-per-view on February 14th, and we're 10 days away. The tagline, all is fair in love and war, has never been more apropos, because the Immortal One announces that the location of the pay-per-view will be the City of Brotherly Love, Philadelphia. That's the love part of the tagline. And as for the war part of the tagline, well, that refers to the venue in Philadelphia, because the venue of the show is the place of many bloody wars in professional wrestling's history, more specifically in a company called ECW. That's right, My Bloody Valentine will take place in the arena. Apologies, I don't think I made sense writing this segment up in the text. But yes, the arena, as I think it was known in 2010. Previously the ECW Arena, Extreme Championship Wrestling, and I think more commonly known as the 2300 Arena today, is the place of where My Bloody Valentine will be held. It just fits well to me. All is fair in love, City of Brotherly Love, Philadelphia, and war, bloody wars in the ECW Arena. Segment rating of 86, wow. So at least in this particular part of the episode I can say unequivocally, thank you Hogan, thank you. Christy Henry runs backstage to catch up to James Storm and Robert Roode of Beer Money, but before either star can get a word in, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall of the band yet again jump Roode and Storm, leaving them down and out. No Sean Waltman in this attack. Scott Hall grabs the mic and, apologies, I have no idea why I've replaced the word Christy with history. My mind is occupied elsewhere here tonight. Hall grabs the mic from Christy and tells Beer Money, "You want a war? Well, you got a war." 7 rating of 58, okay. To be honest, I deserve a lower segment for rating for my nonsensical writing in this segment. Scott Hall grabs the mic from history? What else could he grab from history? Maybe I should think about changing Scott Hall's gimmick to a time traveller. Oh dear, apologies for that. The final match in the My Bloody Valentine tournament, which will determine the 6-man tag team match next week, is now. No Kevin Nash and Scott Hall at ringside here. They're probably making sure there's no interruption from Beer Money again. However, their backstage attacks didn't just involve Robert Roode and James Storm. They involved taking out the Amazing Red and his manager Don West earlier, and their past is about to catch up with them. In about that a good heat and decent wrestling, Sting defeated Sean Waltman in 7:18 with a reverse DDT, i.e. the Scorpion Death Drop. I'll need to go to the moveset and see if I can find the actual name. Following interference from the Amazing Red. There was a chance that there could have been a clean sweep for the band next week's 6-man tag team match, and there was a clean sweep tonight, but it was against the band. None of the band members will be involved. It will be Sting, Mick Foley and Jeff Jarrett taking on Jeff Hardy, Scott Steiner and Mr. Anderson next week in the 6-man tag team match. The winners going on to be the 3 contenders for AJ Styles' TNA World Title. 7 rating of 59, okay. It's revealed why Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were not at ringside in the match that just took place, as Hulk Hogan is seen trying to step in between all 3 members of the band. Sean Waltman has come back chasing after Red, and then there's Beer Money, the Amazing Red and Don West all shouting and screaming at the band. The Immortal One, Hulk Hogan manages to de-escalate the situation and that he will deal with them later. Hogan then sees Abyss from a distance and calls him over. The Icon tells the Monster he needs Abyss's help for My Bloody Valentine. Abyss accepts Hogan's help, although it's not revealed in what way the Monster will aid the Immortal One. Semi-rating of 79, that's more like it. Mike Tenay and Jeremy Bosch are on commentary and they wonder what Velvet Sky's agenda is when it comes to Awesome Kong. Why would a member of the Beautiful People want to aid Kong in her quest to become the next Knockouts champion? Because, in a poor match, Awesome Kong defeated Roxy and ODB in 6:23. Kong pings Roxy with an implant buster thanks to interference from Velvet Sky. Taking into account other segment ratings for matches, I'm more than happy with a 53 match here for the Knockouts. So a question that needs answering about a possible alliance between the Awesome Kong and Velvet Sky. But in the meantime, Kong's victory, thanks to Sky, means that at My Bloody Valentine, Tara will defend a TNA Knockouts title against Awesome Kong. Kong is a much bigger opponent than any TNA knockout and puts a fair amount of the male superstars to shame, if indeed size is what matters. But it might not be Kong that Tara has to worry about on February 14th. Maybe it's Velvet Sky. British Invasion come to the ring and tell the audience that there's a reason why they're the tag team champions, unlike Motor City Machine Guns and Generation Me. Magnus and Doug Williams are interrupted by both teams. Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin of the Motor City Machine Guns and Max and Jeremy Buck of Generation Me, both making the case for why they should be the next challengers for the tag team titles at My Bloody Valentine. Williams and Magnus tell both teams that only one team will get their opportunity, and that team will be decided when Generation Me and Motor City Machine Guns will face each other in a tag team match next week in Impact. 7 rating of 35, I know I have to lower my expectations when it comes to segment ratings. I mean, this is indeed not WWF Invasion. But 35? I don't actually think there's a bad talker in this segment. Although, not heard much from Rob Terry. I set him to intimidation in this segment anyway. But maybe I'm looking at this from a lens in 2025 and not 2010. But still, the rest of the people involved in this segment, I don't think there are really any bad talkers here, are there? Anderson and Hardy are next one-on-one. Hopefully they can settle their issues now before they have to team with Scott Steiner and each other against Mick Foley, Jeff Jarrett and Sting next week in Impact. But it seems like nothing is going to be resolved here as, in a superb match, Mr. Anderson defeated Jeff Hardy in 809, illegally using the ropes for leverage. Well, there was a reason I didn't want this feud to end soon. 7 rating of 72. And Mr. Anderson and Jeff Hardy having great chemistry? Wonderful stuff. Can you say fight forever? Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle are brawling in the back. The two are separated by the Immortal One, who tells both superstars to get ready because their tag team match is next. 7 rating of 72, nice. So, the main event, Samoa Joe teaming with Scott Steiner against Kurt Angle and AJ Styles, is next. And in a battle that had great heat and good wrestling, Kurt Angle and AJ Styles defeated Scott Steiner and Samoa Joe in 7:58 when Scott Steiner was disqualified when Mr. Anderson ran in and attacked AJ Styles. But why is the total non-stop arsehole after AJ? That will be revealed shortly. 7 rating of 76 is a good match to end on, better than last week's main event of Styles and the Amazing Red. Scott Steiner and Samoa Joe have absolutely zero chemistry as partners. Oh, there's a particular segment that comes to mind when I when I think of this. So let me ask, hey Steiner, why do you and Samoa Joe have absolutely zero chemistry as a tag team?
He's fat!
Cheers, Scott, thanks for that. The brawls continue to happen after the match has ended. Mr. Anderson demands Steiner help him take out AJ Styles. It might be an idea to get a jump start and taking out the TNA champion before his title match in 10 days. And Steiner agrees, only for Mr. Anderson to hit the mic check and Big Papa Pump. Jeff Hardy runs down the ramp, gets in the ring and gains a measure of revenge on Anderson by hitting the Twist of Fate. AJ Styles is back up and stands behind Jeff Hardy, snarls at him and hits a Styles Clash. Samoa Joe then comes in behind the Phenomenal One and hits the Muscle Buster in AJ. Now Angle stands behind Samoa Joe, but waits for the submission machine to turn round. The two are face to face and exchange right hand after right hand. Hogan's music hits and demands that the two stop, but neither are given an inch. However, when Angle and Joe continue, out comes Abyss. The monster makes his way to the ring, with Angle and Joe's brawling halted. Hogan tells Angle and Joe that they can save their fight for My Bloody Valentine. Abyss will serve as special enforcer in the match between the Samoan submission machine and the Olympic Gold Medalist, because it will be Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle, in a match that Abyss knows only too well, a Monster's Ball match. Abyss looks at Kurt and Joe, both direct their gaze at the monster. 7 rating of 71 is a nice enough score to end tonight's show.
He's a man!
So, I think it would be remiss of me to address the elephant in the room now, and I'm intrigued to see how this episode goes down with what has happened, and that is the passing of Hulk Hogan. And trying to find the words to convey and conclude this part of the video about the life and times of the Hulkster is not easy, shall we say. That would warrant its own videos, the good, the bad, and I'm sure another video for the good and the bad at the same time. But I really don't want to come off as negative here. I just don't think that's a good idea. So I'm just going to briefly talk about where I'm situated with Hogan. As a wrestling fan growing up and then watching Hogan for the first time in the present day, which would be when the Hulkster made his return to the WWF in 2002. So I didn't start watching wrestling until late '99, mere months before the Millennium Bug's gonna come in and doom us all. But I'd always heard of Hulk Hogan when someone mentioned wrestling, and I'd even seen some of his films when I was a child. Suburban Commando comes to mind. I remember enjoying that as a kid. I need to watch it again and see how well the film has aged, or probably hasn't.
Bye, kitty.
Uh-oh.
Thanks.
Get a goldfish.
I remember watching Mr. Nanny as well. And how can we not forget where it all started? Rocky 3. Thank you, Sam, for reminding me of that one.
Thunder Lips is here. In the flesh, baby.
Listen, after the match, how about we get a Polaroid together, okay?
You're in trouble, man. I'm gonna break him in half like this. Oh, can believe the superhuman strength of Thunder Lips.
Adrian! Catch me! That's incredible!
And I'm sure there was some form of video games that I've played where Hogan was a character in a wrestling game. I can't remember what it was. I'm not even sure. It might have been for the Sega Master System. Now I'm showing my age. Or even for the Mega Drive. But it's interesting how one looks at the evolution of the sport of professional wrestling. And when I mean pro wrestling in this sense, I'm obviously referring to the US, obviously. But as the landscape was changing from the old days of the territory system to eventually just one company ruling above all others, and now the leader of that pack, Hulk Hogan, as the champion, is not only travelling across the US for the then World Wrestling Federation at the time, but how Hogan's name, how his look and his presence had crossed into mainstream culture. I mean, TV interviews, magazine covers, and then of course Hollywood. I mean, this was unseen in pro wrestling at the time, surely? But it wasn't until, funnily enough, after the Invasion storyline ended in November 2001, that I'd only have to wait a couple of more months to wait to see Hogan on TV. And as I really didn't have internet access wherever I was at the time, as well as being a skint student back in the day, I had no prior history of what Hogan was up to. I mean, I knew he was in WCW, but never really got the chance to see him there in the brief moments. I watched WCW Worldwide, I think it was, on Channel 5. Samuel Coe, if you're watching this, am I right? Was that the name of the program at the time? But even then, the few episodes that I did get to watch, I don't think I saw Hogan at all.
That's why this company's in the damn shape it's in, because of bullshit like this.
So when the Hulkster made his return to the World Wrestling Federation at February's pay-per-view, No Way Out, in 2002, I had no idea about what this NWO New World Order group was about at all. I know it's insane to think about it. I started watching wrestling and I missed out on arguably the greatest storylines and groups of all time. Vince versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hogan and the New World Order. That might be a video for another time perhaps. But I remember looking at Hogan and thinking, what's he dressed like that for? Why is he not in red and yellow? So fast forward a month to the incredible match Hogan had with The Rock at WrestleMania 18, and the fans making it known that they were not only glad to see the Immortal One back after 9 years away, as much as he's supposed to be the heel in this story, but also no doubt wishing he'd be wearing the red and yellow again soon. And then the following month that happens, that transpires, we're at the Backlash pay-per-view. Hogan's now challenging Triple H for what was then known as their main title, the Undisputed Championship. And Hogan beating Triple H and winning the title one last time, which I still think in hindsight was the right call, even if it was just for a month, just for like a nice nostalgia trip, and it was just nice to see Hogan in his element, although it was only very brief. Funnily enough, as I'm reminiscing, me and my brother Sam have decided to work through watching all the WrestleManias together. We haven't started in chronological order, mind you, but one WrestleMania we have watched together was WrestleMania 19 in Seattle in 2003. And that match features the 20 years in the making street fight between Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon. I mean, the story just wrote itself was fantastic. And the match itself is actually really fun. But as for Hogan coming into TNA, I remember watching the, I think it was the Turning Point pay-per-view in 2009, November 2009. It's an absolutely great show. I think it's one of their best pay-per-views from an in-ring perspective. And that was the pay-per-view, I believe, where the announcement was made that Hulk Hogan would be coming to TNA. And I remember thinking to myself, really? Do TNA want Hogan? Do they need Hogan? I used to be an avid reader of Power Slam magazine at the time, and they brought up a little piece on if Hogan would be coming to TNA, and the belief was that Hogan would be joining on January 4th, and that he would tell Creative, I think Vince Russo might have been head of Creative at that point, but Hogan telling Creative not to make any major changes to storylines in preparation for Hogan making his debut on January 4th. And I just remember that brief period of waiting for Hogan to join and the Turning Point pay-per-view, so November and December. This effect led to me, arguably, the greatest in-ring pay-per-views of TNA. Turning Point in November 2009 was fantastic. And Final Resolution in December, not as good as Turning Point, but still a really good show. And I'm thinking to myself, ironically, we're talking about the subject of change here, especially for this series. I wasn't too sure if I was ready for the change that was Hulk Hogan to come into TNA, more so for Hulk Hogan to step into a six-sided ring. And there you go, right off the bat. Hulk Hogan, the six-sided ring, that won't be a sentence that won't last long.
I got one thing to say about six sides. You had it, and it only got you so far. Now we're taking you all the way, Jack.
So, I think the reason why I chose this time frame, maybe because I was limited with what I could pick for the TEW IX demo, was that maybe I could make the change for the better here with Hulk Hogan in TNA. I have feelings on this particular episode too with the post show. I'll get onto that afterwards. But as time went on in TNA, more so with the reveal of the Immortal stable Bound for Glory, TNA's version of WrestleMania, in October 2010, it just felt like I was no longer watching an alternative to WWE, but practically more of the same. Essentially what was the past of WCW and WWF in the 80s and 90s to Hogan, in my opinion, was what would be the present and the future of TNA in 2010 whilst he was in charge. Just bad ideas in the wrong place and the wrong time. But that being said, I did feel TNA picked up when the Immortal stable was done. 2012 I feel was probably the best year under Hulk Hogan, but I always got the impression that the damage had been done and fans were starting to tune away. TNA wasn't the same anymore, the company started to struggle financially, pay-per-views are no longer a monthly thing because they can't afford it. The following year, Hogan's contract's expiring, he needs the money, but TNA probably can't afford him when they tried to renegotiate his contract, and it's nearing Bound for Glory in October 2013. And Hogan's contract expires, and he's left weeks before the biggest pay-per-view of the year, which was just bizarre. And to me that was Hogan's career in TNA, gone not with a bang, and sadly not even with a whimper. So I think the point I'm trying to make in all this is I don't even have to talk about Hogan's life, personal life, outside of the ring, and the things that he said and done there, because what I've described, and from what I've seen with Hogan watching on TV, hasn't always been positive in that sense. There's been some great moments that I've managed to watch with Hulk Hogan, and there's been some not so great moments. But I don't deny, there's no doubt the fact that Hulk Hogan's contribution to the wrestling industry, and even in pop culture, back to, starting from the 80s, for want of a better word, when it comes to doing this story, has indeed been impactful, shall I say. So I think with those words, I will leave it at that. So, final score for this episode of Impact is 78. What? Wow, that's completely exceeded my expectations. Oh, okay. I've somehow got a better score on tonight's Impact than the Genesis pay-per-view. Well, there you go, Hogan. Cheers to you. Right, I have to be honest about this episode. I know I've said I've had a rethink about continuing this save, possibly beyond the demo when I buy the game and going towards the end of December. And that still remains, that is the plan. I've still got ideas with what I want to do now. But looking back at tonight's episode, I'm not sure if I've done or said anything creatively exciting for this episode. A lot of it's been backstage brawls, mainly with being Money in the Brand. I think that's happened on several occasions. And if you really wanted to look at it through, you know, with a fine-tooth comb, out of the 7 matches on tonight's card, 6 have involved interruption. I'm not sure if this episode is as much as remembering Hulk Hogan as it is WCW or WWF's booking during the late 90s. And then, the only match that didn't have interruption, which was, I think, Mr. Anderson beating Jeff Hardy, I mean, that still ended with a tainted victory because Anderson uses the ropes to win. Of course, from a TEW perspective, that, you know, is not taken to nobody will care about that, the score says so, but creatively, I could imagine some podcasters, some that come to mind who I do enjoy watching, look at this and I'm thinking, God, another interruption? Really? I've mentioned this before, but it's such a different dynamic when there's only 1 2-hour TV show to drive stories forward. Some will argue that Raw and SmackDown in the WWF and WWE before the brand split in 2002 is just too much TV a week to drive stories towards the next pay-per-view. And to be honest, I'm of a different mindset. Maybe because that's what I grew up on. I'm still the mindset here that Impact, and because Impact's the only TV show, the 2-hour TV show, that drives the stories forward to the next TNA pay-per-view, isn't enough. And maybe I feel like I'm cramming too much together, too fast maybe. But then again, maybe that's what needs to happen, maybe that's what makes Impact enjoyable, I don't know. But now I'm starting to wonder, should I create a second TV show? Would that be too much? I've talked about how I want TNA obviously to be the alternative to WWE, and ironically, doing the same thing here with another TV show. Then again, WCW did the same, who knows? Would a second show be too much? Would this be the perfect idea to continue the theme of change, perhaps, and Hulk Hogan's influence in this timeline? In the meantime, I'll think about it, but let me know your thoughts too. Looking on towards next week's Impact, which will be the final Impact before the My Bloody Valentine pay-per-view. So we now know who will be the 2 teams of 3 involved in a 6-man tag team match next week. It will be Scott Steiner, Mr. Anderson and Jeff Hardy versus Jeff Jarrett, Mick Foley and Sting. The team of 3 that wins this match will be the 3 challengers for AJ Styles' TNA World Championship. We will know who Magnus and Doug Williams defend their TNA World Tag Team titles against at My Bloody Valentine, as Generation Me take on Motor City Machine Guns. The winners will go on to face British Invasion on February 14th. And speaking of the My Bloody Valentine pay-per-view, here is the card so far. Submission match for the TNA Television Championship. Desmond Wolfe will defend the strap against Eric Young in a rematch from Genesis. Except this time, Wolfe is the champion. Flair is now in the corner of Desmond Wolfe, and EY will have to beat the champion in the kind of match that Eric Young just lost now when he tapped to Flair's figure 4 leg lock. How does Eric Young go into this match knowing he's got to beat Wolfe at Flair's game? 6-man tag team match. The new team of Crystallized, that is Christopher Daniels, Giant Bernard and Carl Anderson, accompanied by their manager Crystal, will take on Crystal's soon-to-be ex-husband Bobby Lashley and Team 3D, Brother Ray and Brother Devon. How will Crystal's new stable fare against her ex-husband and one of the most decorated tag teams in professional wrestling? And will Bobby be in the right frame of mind to compete come Valentine's Day? TNA Knockouts title on the line as Tara defends against Awesome Kong. Kong won the 3-way match tonight to become the #1 contender to Tara's Knockouts title at My Bloody Valentine, but it seems the Awesome Monster Knockout has been somewhat under the influence of Velvet Sky. It was Sky who interfered in tonight's 3-way match to make sure Awesome Kong will be the challenger on February 14th. But why? What's in it for Velvet? Tara faces a tough test at My Bloody Valentine when she defends the gold, but it's not just Awesome Kong that Tara will have to watch out for in 10 days' time. We know the match has been made next week, But on February 14th, British Invasion will defend the TNA World Tag Team titles, but who will be their opponents? Will it be Generation Me or Motor City Machine Guns? We'll find out the answer to that match next week on Impact. Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle. The Olympic Gold Medalist made his return to Impact last week following the attack by Samoa Joe at Genesis, and it's evident after tonight that the two would no sooner kill each other if they ever got the chance. Hulk Hogan knows there's too much bad blood for this rivalry to ever be settled in a normal one-on-one match, but with Abyss now as a special enforcer following the conclusion to tonight's Impact, Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe can finally settle their differences in a match that Abyss knows only too well, the Monsters Ball match. And lastly, the main event. AJ Styles will defend the TNA World Championship in a 4-way match, but we won't know who his 3 opponents are at My Bloody Valentine until after the 6-man tag team match next week. AJ will defend his title against either Jeff Hardy, Mr. Anderson and Scott Steiner, or Styles will defend the belt against Mick Foley, Jeff Jarrett and Sting. It all comes down to the winners of that 6-man tag team match on Impact next week. One more thing to mention before the obvious thing that is the progress in Fully Loaded is an issue I'm having at the moment when it comes to uploading videos and using copyrighted music. I'm absolutely a noob to this sort of thing. But the reason why I use specific music is I just fits in well with the theme of the episode that I'm using, the lead up to the pay-per-view for example. And it seems the record label Overlords aren't particularly fond of a particular song I've been using for a fair chunk of my Invasion videos, as well as the same song that I've used for the TNA's Genesis pay-per-view episode, and as a result, those particular episodes are blocked sadly. I'm hoping that this will be an issue that resolves itself soon, as it's not the first time I've had this issue. I've had something being blocked in the past, but then it was changed after a couple of days. But if not, I might have to think of re-uploading these episodes at some point in the future. I would like to go back at some point and give some of the old episodes a fresh lick of paint, so to speak. The idea in time would be eventually to create 2 playlists for Invasion, one with visuals and one without perhaps. Oh, and speaking of Invasion, I'm on the last match of the Fully Loaded pay-per-view as we speak, so all being well, whilst the next episode of this playthrough will be Impact, I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks that the next episode I publish will be Fully Loaded 2001 in all its splendour, so to speak. I hope. Oh, there is a lot to talk about with this episode, as you can imagine. Not just the pay-per-view itself, but my own reflections afterwards. The good, the bad, and the police? I'll explain all that soon. But thank you for your patience. I think it's fair to say that the show itself was a labour of love, as long as it's taken for me to get out. I really hope you feel the same. So again, thank you for bearing with me. So I will see you next for Fully Loaded. And again, as always, thank you so much for watching.